I used to think trust was the easiest part of marriage. With Nathan, it felt natural, automatic. For years, he worked a stable job with steady hours, no travel, no drama, just a quiet rhythm to our life that made me feel safe. So when he started traveling for work, I didn't question it. I actually felt proud. I thought maybe all his dedication was finally being recognized. He'd text me from the airport, send me pictures from hotel rooms, tell me about early meetings and late dinners. And I'd believe every word. I'd even help him pack, folding his shirts, slipping a note into his sock drawer like I used to do when we were younger. It felt good, supporting him. I wanted to be the wife who stood by her husband while he climbed. But then, things didn't add up. There were no promotions, no raises, just more trips, more time away, and the same old paycheck. I tried to ignore it, told myself he was stressed, or maybe just bad at sharing news. But every time he came home, he looked relaxed, not drained, not overworked. Relaxed, like someone who'd just come back from vacation, not business. At first I brushed it off. Maybe the stress just hadn't caught up to him yet. Maybe he was handling things better than I thought. But then I noticed the little things, like how his suitcase was always too light coming home. How his phone suddenly had a passcode when it never did before. And how he stopped talking about people from the office, like they'd all vanished. I remember one trip in particular. He came back sun-kissed, glowing, like he'd spent the weekend at the beach, not in a boardroom. He tossed his bag in the hallway, kissed me on the cheek, and asked what was for dinner. That night I watched him sleep, peaceful, almost smug. And I felt something shift in my stomach. Not quite anger, not quite fear, just suspicion. I told myself I was imagining it, that I was being dramatic. I reminded myself of the man I married, solid, responsible, not the type to lie. But no matter how many times I talked myself down, that whisper in the back of my mind kept getting louder. If he's working so hard, it said, why does he look like he's vacationing? And once that question settled in, it wouldn't let me go. I started watching him differently, not in an obvious way. I didn't want to raise alarms, but I paid attention. To how he smiled at his phone more than he smiled at me, to how his answers got shorter when I asked about his trips, to how he seemed more interested in packing cologne than charging his work laptop. And every time I hugged him goodbye, something inside me pulled back. There was this one evening, just before his next trip. He came home with a new shirt, expensive, too sleek for the man who used to live in polos and khakis. I asked where it came from. He said it was a gift from a client. Then he changed the subject before I could blink. I nodded, played along, made dinner. But in my head, the pieces kept shifting, arranging themselves into something I didn't want to name. Still, I didn't ask, not yet. Because once you ask, you can't unhear the answer. And a part of me, maybe the part that still loved him, wasn't ready to burn it all down. But another part, the sharper part, it was already taking notes, quietly, patiently. Because if something was truly off, I needed more than a hunch. I needed proof. The doubt was eating at me. I wasn't sleeping well. My mind kept circling back to that new shirt, those short answers, the way his airport selfies never showed anything beyond a hotel hallway. So one morning, after he left for another so-called business trip, I did something I never thought I'd do. I picked up my phone and dialed the number for his company. It rang twice before a young voice answered, cheerful, unsuspecting. Human Resources, this is Lisa. I cleared my throat, tried to sound casual. Hi, I'm just trying to reach Nathan Miller. There was a pause, the kind that cracks something open. Nathan? Oh. He left the company almost 3 months ago. I'm sorry, he didn't tell you? No, he didn't. My hand was shaking when I ended the call. It felt like someone had pulled the rug from beneath my entire marriage. 3 months. 3 months. Of pretending to go to work, of looking me in the eye every day like it meant nothing. It was like watching a movie I thought I'd seen before, only to realize I'd missed the entire plot twist. I didn't cry, I didn't scream, I didn't even tell anyone. That kind of betrayal doesn't hit you all at once. It seeps in slowly, like water under a locked door. You sit with it. You feel the silence grow teeth. That night, I made dinner like usual, asked about his trip like usual, kissed him goodnight even. But my mind wasn't with him anymore. It was already moving ahead. Because now I knew one thing. Whatever these trips were, they had nothing to do with work. And I wasn't going to sit around hoping for an explanation that would never come. I wanted answers. Real ones. So the next morning, while he was in the shower, I slipped into the closet, found the travel bag he always used, and tucked a GPS tracker into the lining of the inside pocket. No emotion. Just steady hands. The plan was simple. Let him lie one more time and watch where the truth led me. When he left the following week, suitcase in hand, I kissed him like I always did. Be safe, I said. He smiled, lied again, said he'd text when he landed. As soon as he drove off, I opened the app, watched the blinking dot move, and keep moving. Not toward the airport, but hours away, toward a town I'd never even heard of. I zoomed in on the map, watching the little dot settle into a neighborhood that looked like it hadn't changed since the 80s. Quiet streets, rows of modest houses, no office buildings, no hotels, just stillness. I stared at the screen for what felt like hours, my mind racing ahead, trying to fill in the blanks my heart wasn't ready to name. But deep down, I already knew. He stayed there all weekend. The dot never moved far. Just little blips, a grocery store, a gas station, back to the same house. I studied the rhythm of someone else's life with my husband at the center of it. And every time I refreshed the app, I felt myself shedding another layer of denial. The kind of denial only a woman in love could afford to carry for too long. I didn't confront him. Not yet. That wasn't the kind of ending I wanted. I needed to see it with my own eyes. The house, the woman, the life fully alive and breathing. So I waited. And while he packed for his next trip, talking about fake meetings and client dinners, I was already planning a trip of my own. One I'd take alone, in the dark, long before sunrise. The night before his next trip, I barely slept. My suitcase was already in the trunk. Nothing much, just a blanket, some snacks, a thermos of strong coffee. At 4:30 a.m., I slipped out of bed, careful not to wake him, and started driving. The roads were empty, just me and the sound of tires on wet asphalt. I didn't blast music or call anyone. I needed the silence. I needed to feel every mile. The town was smaller than I'd imagined. It was the kind of place where strangers stand out, and I was very much a stranger. I found the house easily, same street I'd seen on the tracker, a faded blue front door, a porch swing, wind chimes that clicked with every breeze. I parked 2 houses down and waited, pretending to scroll through my phone, heart pounding louder than the wind outside. Hours passed. I watched the sun come up behind the roofline. Birds sang. A mail truck passed. It was so normal. That's what made it worse, because whatever I was about to see, it didn't feel like a mistake anymore. It felt rehearsed, repeated, lived in. At 9:03 a.m., the door opened. And there he was, Nathan, stepping out like he belonged there, holding a woman's hand like it was his second skin. She wasn't what I expected. Not younger, not flashier, just ordinary. Brown hair in a loose braid, faded jeans, a warm cardigan. She looked like someone you'd trust to water your plants or watch your dog. And yet, there she was, kissing my husband on the cheek like it was her morning routine, like I didn't exist, like 15 years of marriage could be erased with one touch. Then came the envelope. She handed it to him so casually, like they'd done this dance 100 times before. I couldn't see what was inside, but I knew. Money. It wasn't romance. It was a transaction. My stomach turned. My hands trembled on the steering wheel. And something inside me snapped, not with rage, but with a painful kind of clarity. The kind that settles into your bones when you realize you were never crazy. Just right. I didn't plan to get out of the car, but I did. Maybe it was instinct. Maybe it was years of silence building to one single moment. I slammed the door, stood tall, and called out his name like it still meant something. Nathan! He froze, turned around like a ghost had tapped him on the shoulder, and the look on his face, panic, shame, disbelief, told me everything I hadn't wanted to admit. He took a step forward, like distance could be erased that easily. Claire, what are you doing here? The audacity in his voice almost made me laugh, as if I was the one out of place, as if I had somehow broken into his secret life. I didn't move. I didn't scream. I just looked him dead in the eye and said, I could ask you the same thing, but I already know the answer. The woman behind him shifted, clutching the envelope to her chest. She didn't speak, but her face said enough: confusion, fear, and the dawning realization that she wasn't the only one. I could see the questions forming behind her eyes, just like they had once formed behind mine, but I didn't give her time to speak. This moment wasn't for her. It was for me. And in that split second, something changed in him. His shoulders dropped, his mouth parted like he was about to lie again, but the air between us was too thick with truth. There was nowhere for him to hide. I could feel the weight of every unanswered question settling into the silence. And yet I knew this wasn't the end. It was just the start of a very public unraveling. I didn't plan the confrontation, but once I was standing there, I couldn't hold it back. You told me you were at conferences. You said you were closing deals. So tell me, Nathan, what's this? Is she your client too? He opened his mouth, but there were no rehearsed lines to save him now. Just silence. Raw, heavy silence. And behind him, the woman started inching toward the door. I raised a hand. Don't. She froze. I wasn't angry at her, not really, but I needed her to see the damage she was part of. Nathan looked between us, and for a second I thought he might run. But instead, he sighed, that long, pathetic kind of sigh a man lets out when he's run out of stories. She pays me, he said, just like that, cold, empty, like it was logical. I don't love her. I don't even like her that much. But I was tired, Claire, tired of scraping by, tired of being broke. She made it easy. His words didn't sting, not like I expected. What hurt more was the emptiness behind them, like our life, our home, our history, was just something he could cash in. I looked at him and realized he hadn't just betrayed me. He'd sold us both short. I stared at him, searching for even a flicker of the man I used to know. But all I saw was someone who had grown comfortable with compromise, not just of our vows, but of his own dignity. So you gave up your integrity, I said quietly, and our marriage, for easy. The words came out like a breath I didn't know I'd been holding, measured, calm, but they cut deeper than any scream ever could. He tried to defend himself, mumbled something about bills and pressure and how I never understood how hard it was for him. As if I hadn't stood beside him through every lean year, every late notice, every no-name job. I wanted to laugh. Instead, I looked him in the eye and said, You didn't break because life got hard. You broke because you were offered an escape, and you took it. The woman behind him turned away then, like she couldn't bear to watch anymore. I didn't blame her. It's hard to look at a person when the fantasy you built around them starts to collapse. But I wasn't collapsing. Not anymore. I pulled my phone from my coat pocket, snapped a photo of the two of them, not out of spite, but for truth. Because I knew one day they'd need to be reminded who the real fool was. I didn't yell. I didn't cry. I just took one step back and said, You'll regret thinking I was the fool. Not a threat, not a performance, just a fact. A truth that hung in the morning air longer than any apology he didn't bother to offer. His mouth opened, maybe to beg, maybe to bargain, but I was already walking away. My heels clicked on the pavement like a closing door. As I reached the car, I could feel him watching me. I didn't turn around. I didn't need to. Some moments are final, and we both knew this was one of them. The kind of moment you don't come back from. Not with flowers, not with excuses, not even with the truth. Because once someone trades love for convenience, they don't get to ask for forgiveness wrapped in regret. I slid into the driver's seat, shut the door, and let out the breath I didn't realize I'd been holding since that first suspicious trip. The picture on my phone felt heavier than it should, but it wasn't just a photo. It was proof of the lie, of the betrayal, of the moment I stopped being a woman who wondered and became one who knew. And that knowing, it was the beginning of something new. I didn't wait. I didn't let the dust settle or sleep on it. The moment I got home, I opened my laptop and filed for divorce. No long letters, no drawn-out conversations, no tears, just clean, cold paperwork. It was strangely empowering, hitting submit on something that had once been sacred. Because whatever we weren't that anymore. Not even close. Then I sent the photo to our closest friends, to my family. No commentary, no explanation. Just the truth. Unfiltered, undeniable. I didn't want to hear the gasps or get the pitying texts. I just wanted the silence that came when people finally saw what I had been carrying alone. I wanted the weight of his deception to shift from my shoulders to his. And just to make sure the truth echoed louder than his excuses, I called his old boss. "He's been telling people he still works for you," I said plainly. "Thought you should know." The woman on the other end of the line was quiet for a long time. Then she thanked me, said it explained a lot. And just like that, another mask fell. Another part of his story dissolved under the light of reality. The weeks that followed weren't easy, but they were clean. I got a new job, nothing glamorous, but it was mine. I packed up the house in silence, one drawer at a time, letting go of memories like old receipts, kept too long, faded, useless. I sold the couch where we used to fall asleep during movies. I donated his books. Every decision felt like a breath I hadn't taken in years. Then came the move. New city, new street, new mornings with different sunlight. No more waiting for text messages from airports that didn't exist. No more counting the hours he was gone. I filled the walls with photos of people who never lied to me. I bought a new mug. White ceramic, no cracks. It said, "Begin again." And every morning, I did. One afternoon, my phone buzzed. It was a message from a number I hadn't blocked. Yet. It was him. "She stopped paying. I messed up. Can we talk?" Just like that. No apology. No acknowledgement of what he took from me. Just a hand reaching out because his safety net had snapped. I stared at it for a second, then hit block. Simple, quiet, permanent. I didn't cry after blocking him. I didn't feel triumphant either. Just calm. Like my life had finally exhaled. There was no grand finale, no dramatic monologue. Just me, standing in the middle of a kitchen I chose, in a life I built, drinking coffee from a mug that didn't remind me of anything. And for the first time in a long time, the silence around me didn't feel lonely. It felt earned. People say healing comes in waves, but for me it came in steps. Unpacking books onto new shelves, meeting neighbors whose names I didn't have to fake a smile for, sleeping diagonally in bed just because I could. I wasn't looking for closure. I was living it. Every single day I woke up without him was proof that freedom doesn't always feel like fireworks. Sometimes it feels like peace. And if he ever wonders what happened to the woman who used to believe in him, she didn't disappear. She evolved. She got tired of believing in people who made promises with empty hands. He wanted easy. That's what he chased. But I chose something better. I chose free.